Hey folks, it's Fernando doing another video here for the Modern Survivalist, and this is going to be a video about my opinion on current world events. This has been requested many times actually these last few days, these last few weeks actually. Folks asking through messages, emails, what's my take on what's going on, the situation and such. And to be honest, I haven't done it so far because it's a little bit frustrating, especially after I did the Charlie Hebdo magazine video. I realized that a lot of folks just will not get it. They're basically brainwashed by mainstream media, and it's a little bit sad and frustrating to see that. So that's maybe one of the reasons why I don't feel as inclined to do this type of videos. Where are we right now? We're in a pretty bad situation. I mean, it's a place where there's growing intolerance and growing hatred in society. You see it here in Europe. You see it in the United States as well. All these things. So, I mean, so many of them clearly orchestrated, and even false flag operations to a great degree. With the attacks in France, most likely. Everything is pointing towards something that has been organized, a false flag operation specifically so as to have the impact that it had and had that effect in society. You see in the United States the situation with the minorities, with illegals, with the African American community. You see all this happening, and especially in Europe, it's almost like looks almost like a pre-Nazi Germany mentality in a lot of people. It's especially scary when you see people that look normal talk as if they were completely insane, completely mad. They talk about killing this or that type of people, getting rid of them, and especially sometimes people that were more normal and would not have that kind of outburst, and you see how they've changed in a very short period of time, how effective the media has been in changing their opinion. When we hear, if you read any articles about how the media manipulates the public opinion and such, that manipulation of public opinion is a little bit of brainwash in each individual, and when you see it, it's amazing. And you see how people change the way they used to be, the way they used to think, and how they're thinking now once all these operations have done their job. So I think it's a climate, it's a very dangerous climate, especially the intolerance, the hatred. Is a pretty dangerous scenario for the rise of fascism, of very dangerous types of people. Right now we have the situation with Greece, that in theory the left won over there, and a lot of people are very scared. A lot of people are very happy because they think that they're finally going to be getting rid of the right capitalists of the European Union and such, and they're not going to be paying back. It's ridiculous to a point to talk about left, right, socialists and conservatives, liberals. Whenever people talk about the liberal media, there's no such thing as liberal mainstream media. Such thing does not exist. All of those channels and media outlets that you may consider liberal are in fact owned by a handful of the most conservative, most powerful people in the planet. And the idea of communists and capitalists, we haven't lived in a true capitalist society for quite some time. The most powerful people running things, the owners of big oil companies, of the main media corporations, of pharmaceuticals, food companies, the main military manufacturing companies. it's folks that would not have been able, especially the larger financial institutions, they would not exist in a true capitalist society. In a true capitalist society, if you fail, you lose what you invest, and that's that. In this version of capitalism that we have right now, if a bank that is too big to fail goes bankrupt, it doesn't matter. It just gets bailed out with people's money. So there's no risk being involved in a true capitalist society. A capitalist, someone comes with money, invests, creates a business, and if that business fails, that's too bad for him. That's not happening anymore, and it hasn't happened for quite some time. And this is pretty much of a complex topic, maybe beyond the extent of this video, but it's important to understand this. You haven't been living in a capitalist society for at least 50 years now, if not more. The moment in which money can be created out of thin air, the moment we lost the gold standard was the moment we lost our liberties in terms of money. That's the moment in which you gave up your freedom. That's the moment you gave up your liberty to people that actually run and create money out of thin air. When you live in a world where some people can create money out of thin air, that means that your labor is no longer yours anymore. You belong to them. You belong to the people that make the money. I would use the word print the money, but that's not even the case anymore. It's not even being printed. It's created. It's generated digitally in a computer, so it's not even printed anymore. There's not even paper being wasted in doing this. So you have to understand that, so as to understand the different interests invested here and what's going to be happening. You have the oil dropping like crazy right now, and you turn on your TV or you go online and you read certain media outlets, which you know who are the owners of those, and you see all this bullshit being said about how the price of oil is dropping because of cars being more efficient and nonsense like that. That's not true. The only reason why oil is being manipulated to such a degree and kept so low is simply so as to hurt the countries and the groups that are intended to be affected by it. Specifically Russia. Russia loses, for each dollar that the price of oil drops, Russia loses $2 billion. Each dollar, $2 billion lost by Russia. So it's an attempt to hurt Russia. It's an attempt to hurt Iran. All these countries that are enemies of the that are in conflict with the interests of the main elites. Those are the ones that are being hurt. We're very close, in fact, to a pretty dangerous situation now with Russia in Ukraine, eastern Ukraine, with a conflict. There's no good guy there. The West is just as guilty as the pro-Russians in the region. Both have been committing awful crimes. There's no good guy here. There's just people fighting for their own interests. All right. And unfortunately, this has the potentiality of expanding and becoming worse. In Middle East, you have the same thing happening with Syria. You have occupied land in Syria, and you have companies drilling in occupied land in Syria. And no one seems to notice that. No one seems to notice that, so as to occupy a country, so as to displace the people that were in that, in their own country, rightfully so, and suddenly a bulldozer comes and levels the entire village where they've lived for their entire lives, and they put an oil rig there, and someone is doing that. Someone is benefiting from that. You have ISIS right now, as if they came out of thin air. All of a sudden, the U.S. military leaves, and just a few weeks or a few months later at the most, ISIS was already there, as if hiding under the sand apparently, and no one seems to have noticed all this going on until they left. And how does this work in terms of the allies? in many ways the people, some of the ISIS groups were being trained and armed by the US military just a few months ago, and then they turn against them because these are the ones that were supposed to be against the other guy running the country that was particularly bad. So they were arming and training, both arming and training these groups that were even worse than the dictator that was already in place. So all these interests, all this manipulation is quite concerning. How is this going to be playing out in the end? There's no way of telling, how good or bad it could be. I think it's a pretty delicate situation right now. I think that it's again, I keep going back to what you see the mainstream media attempting to do in terms of already organizing the public opinion in a certain way against certain people, getting them ready so as to justify military action in certain places. All right, so as to make people comfortable with that kind of situation. And could there be another terrorist attack in Europe or in US just so as to give people that little extra motivation, so as to get the ball rolling in a certain direction? Yeah, could happen. I mean, absolutely. And you do have a growing animosity among these factions as well, and you do have radical Islamic organizations, which in many cases are being financed and supported by the people that are supposed to be fighting them. The old trick of creating the enemy that you're going to be fighting later. So it's yeah, I mean, it's not very encouraging. I think that it's a time to remain calm. I think that it's very important to know where you're getting your facts from. I think that today more than ever, it's important to know who you're allowing into your brain. You know what I mean by this? If you're going to be watching CNN, if you're going to be watching Fox, if you're going to be watching whatever network you're watching, do take a few extra minutes to Google up who owns each of these corporations and what are their interests. All right, may take a little bit of time just to see who owns what and who owns that other thing, that other company, but it's really not impossible. It's easy enough to do. And once you understand that a little bit better, and you understand the different players and their own interests, you see why certain agendas are being in place. Just remaining calm, trying to prepare as best as possible, making your plans just in case. All the things that we've talked about in this channel for so long, those are still in place. Those haven't changed at all. Reasonable preparation is key for being ready for whatever life throws your way, including a more violent, economically unstable future. All right, folks. So that's my take on what's happening right now. That's what I see being played. Again, particularly worried about the level of violence in society. Not just the violence of crime. Like what you see in places like in South America with lots of violent crime on the streets, but people in civilized places having a mentality that it's quite concerning, if you know what I mean. Guys, that's gonna be it. If you want to learn more about survival and preparedness, I always recommend my books, the Modern Survival Manual, Surviving the Economic Collapse, which is linked below, which is gonna be something that may end up being helpful in the future, as well as Bugging Out and Relocating, so as to make wise decisions as of where you would be better off in terms of where you're living. I think that unfortunately that's going to be one of the big factors. Maybe these days this is the book, my second book is the one that you should really be checking out, so as to know where you're better positioned in the world. And also having plans so as to relocate wisely if you ever have to do that in a short period of time. All right, that's the kind of thing that I cover in the second book. And for this type of situation that we're living in right now, I think it's especially important. All right, the possibility that you may have to relocate fast. You know, guys, it's very simple. You're either a refugee or you are an expat. You know, when it comes to that point, and this is something that people in Eastern Ukraine know very well because they are dealing with that right now. And it all seems like so distant, right? You know, Eastern Ukraine, you know, well, it's Eastern Ukraine, then it's Eastern Poland, then it's Eastern Germany, and then it starts moving in your direction, right? Yeah, I definitely would pay a particular attention to this kind of thing, about having plans laid ahead of time in case you have to leave in a hurry, unexpectedly so. Okay guys, that's gonna be all for now. Take care, have a great day, subscribe, share. See you on our next video.